whatever comes out of my mouth as this thing I'm chewing on, that's what you get. And it is honestly brilliant because it makes like the people around him almost feel like they have to pay more attention. And even once they do, it's just some of the most disgusting shit coming out of his mouth with physically the most disgusting
making
coming
like
out of his mouth, like spit and like the cigar, droppings, whatever else. It's just gross.
And just instantly making like racist remarks about the idea of like a white couple getting blown up at the border and having to work with like a Mexican cop who might be investigating it. And, even if it's just in a friendly observational position where he's like, I won't get in your way. He's like, you're damn right you won't get in my way. Like they immediately clash. In terms of temperament, in terms of just like, worldview, in terms of positions on the law. Like, I mean, obviously, Heston's Vargas views the job as like this, dirty but necessary thing that requires a lot of time and work and evidence and a kind of moral framework. He refers to himself frequently as like a soldier in a war, someone who does his duty but doesn't take pleasure in it in any kind, whereas Hank Quinlan
doesn't believe he should in a sense.
No, exactly. And Hank Quinlan, on the other hand, works not with hard work and evidence. It's more of this just like very unpleasant sort of impulse and like gut hunches, he calls them, instead of actual kind of police work. And he sadistically relishes in the power that it grants him to do whatever vicious thing he wants. It's almost a more kind of intensely kind of ugly cousin to like Charles Foster Kane, in the sense that, Wells plays him with a sort of similar sort of like physically imposing kind of like powerful tyrant energy.
Yeah. I mean, the way he's framed, as soon as he gets out of the car, there's two shots, one of that like big, just close up sweaty face and them chopping on the cigar. But then there's this other one where he's talking to two of the other policemen on the scene. And they have it kind of at a low angle. So he's tall as he is. So he kind of always is towering over people, but with that angle, it looks so much bigger. And it's both for kind of like the audience, just to feel kind of like he's overlooming you. He's a very powerful character. And it just seems like it's something, it's the same with the characters that are beside him, where they look up to him, but he's doing it at this angle that seems a little bit more seedy and something that you're not supposed to trust. But they are still looking up to him and think that he's a respectable man because he's done all of these. They heavily imply that he's solved a lot of cases and he has this quote unquote tuition where basically it results in him planting a lot of evidence, and that's how he solves things. And that is really where his intuition lies.
Solves every case, baby.
And I do also like that there's this thing, he kind of paints it as like it's a necessary, and both movies kind of do this, but it's a necessary thing to do so that society can still view society as this clean and well taken care of thing, that we're doing a good job for the community, we're cleaning it up, you don't need to look over here, no worries, we'll make sure all the ugly things go away. And you'll know that there's justice because we solved the case. We didn't just leave it hanging. It's just all predicated on a lie. So there's a lot of really great just things implied in that one opening sequence with his character.
Yeah, well, because I like that it establishes as someone who obviously has a lot of power, has a lot of respect in the scene, but there is something like, very rotten that kind of underlines his character, which obviously it's, as Jamie laid out, which we'll get into plot wise, like it is very much his actual methods of police work are incredibly rotten. But before that, it's almost depicted in him physically, where he feels like he's almost a character in the process of like going crazy. And like clearly he's kind of like sick or unhealthy. He can hardly breathe through like half this movie.
Yeah, and he has a cane, so he's constantly limping. It seems like his body is now working against him. And it does feel like it's because his principles have caught up to him a little bit.
Yeah, and we're about to witness like the kind of like brutal, downfall of like a kind of, lifestyle and character perspective, and
but he's hysterically holding on to it, and that's what's so dangerous about his character in this time period that we get to see him at. Him at the tail end is just him fighting to the death, and it gets to the point of
he's incredibly dangerous. He's willing to do whatever he needs to do to kind of like stay on top, and whatever, even Vargas, who is someone who is trying to do the actual casework, he just like completely ignores him and doesn't follow any path that he takes him. Like, one of the prime suspects, in Vargas's opinion, should immediately be Uncle Joe Grandy, played by Akim Tamarov, who is the head of a sort of like drug crime ring that Vargas has already been sort of familiar with and been investigating on kind of the Mexico side of the border.
And we see pretty quickly threaten Miss Vargas, I believe.
Yes, well, yeah, not only that, and he has like a bunch of like young teenage gangsters in his employ, who we'll talk about later, who could very well have done the thing that they were asking. And yeah, I do like that one of the first times we meet him, Janet Leigh, is him threatening Janet Leigh to be like, you can't, your husband needs to back the fuck off. And she just refers to him as a lopsided little Caesar.
She's very witty in this and fun, the way she talks back to everybody. I like her a lot.
Yeah, making fun of both his kind of like mob boss demeanor, but also his ridiculous toupee. But Quinlan has no interest in listening to either of their suspicions on this guy, and instead triggers his own investigation that kicks off like what is essentially a series of like very incredibly moody, tense, and gorgeous sequences around the border town, where the camera basically just like voyeuristically glides and like dances around various garbage.